Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a movie review. This movie is a thriller from the USA, English language, released in the year 2016, directed by Jeremy Saulnier, and this film is called Green Room. So Green Room is about this punk rock band. They're very disillusioned with their lives, they're not as successful as they want to be, and they're desperate for money. So they need a gig, and they need a gig very fast. So this guy who's doing an interview about this band, he says that, look, I might have a little bit of work for you. I can get you a gig, and hopefully this is the money that you want. So they take this gig, and it's in this cafe, and it's a very cringe-worthy performance, and they only get $6 each for their work. So they say to this guy, look, that's an insult, go away, leave us alone. But this guy doing the interview, he says, look, let me make it up to you, I'll give you a proper gig, you're going to be very happy with this. So he tells them that he has a cousin who works at this skinhead club in a very remote lands in this woody area, and he says, you can go there, you can do a gig, and you're going to get up to $300 each. And so this band sees this as an opportunity that is too good to refuse, so they say okay, and so they travel to this club. So they perform here, and then after the performance, one of the band members stumbles upon a crime scene. Now, the people who committed this crime see this band as a threat, basically the only evidence linking them to the crime, and so they see the band as they have to be exterminated, basically have to be killed. So this band lock themselves in the green room, and they're not going to let anybody in until they sort out what they're going to try and do. So it does turn into a very nightmarish struggle for survival, and who comes out in the end is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Green Room. This is a very, very interesting film, but unfortunately this movie doesn't really reach the levels of expectations that I had for it. Now, number one, Jeremy Saulnier does direct this movie, and I was a massive fan of his film Blue Ruin. Now, Blue Ruin I haven't actually reviewed yet, I don't think, so I'm going to review it a little bit later, so I won't say too much about that movie. But what that movie does so well is that it takes a standard sort of idea in a film, in that case revenge, basically seeking revenge on people that have committed wrong by you. And so in a lot of movies about revenge, it's very caricature. These people are killing people, and the audience get a strong satisfaction because the bad guy got what he deserved. But what Blue Ruin does so well is that it paints it in a very realistic way, in that this character is getting revenge, but there's no sense of satisfaction, because it shows you how destructive violence can be, and that if you fight violence with violence, it can actually make the situation worse. And so I think that's what made Blue Ruin so unique, and it divided itself from other revenge films. So coming into Green Room, I was expecting something of the same quality, and that's exactly what I got with Green Room, in that these characters, all these characters in the film are committing these acts, and the way that they respond to the acts of violence is basically indicating what world they're from. So what I mean by that is, when the bad guys are committing acts of violence, they're not really that fazed by it, because this is their world. But then you've got these band members who are these young adults who just want to play music, and they just do it for the love of music, and they're not really from the world of violence and carnage. And so when violence happens to them, and when they have to commit violence, it has a devastating effect on these people. And because you can actually relate to these people, it gives it much more of a fierce sort of a fearsome sort of atmosphere, and you feel, okay, these people, they could be my friend, they could be my neighbour, these are people that I could easily go and talk to, so I want them to get out of this. And I think Jeremy Saulnier does a great job at painting two different sets of people from a completely different world, and how devastating the world of violence can be, not only on the people committing it, but the people who actually, not only the people receiving it, but also the people committing it. So the level of satisfaction is not really there. When the bad guys get what they deserve, you don't really feel, okay, yeah, that was very satisfying, I really enjoy that, because there's always that sense of awkwardness. There's always that sense that, okay, this happened, but why don't I feel any better about it? And so it's painting violence for what violence is, and that's, I think, Jeremy Saulnier's biggest plus, is that finally he's not glorifying violence, he's showing violence for how ugly it is, how destructive it is, and how unnecessary it is, and how wasteful it is when it's actually committed. So I thought the level of brutality in this film is extreme. It's very, very brutal. When people say that this is a very shocking film, they're not wrong. They're basically not that's not an understatement. Basically, this movie does hit you very hard. But I thought it was very necessary. A lot of films show very extreme violence for the sake of it, just to shock an audience. But this movie, not only does the violence shock you, but it gives you an indication of the immediate situation, and how dangerous this situation is, and what these people are truly capable of. And so when you see that these people are capable of extreme violence upon people who are very innocent, you think to yourself, okay, the situation has become very real. The director is not shying away from anything, so he's showing you the pure carnage, that these people are capable of. And so because he doesn't shy away from the very graphic violence, I think it gives it much more of a hard-hitting approach based on the fact that, as I said, these characters are so relatable. Look what's going to happen to you if you fall into the clutches of these wrong people. So nothing felt glorified in this film, which is the same with Blue Ruin, and I thought that the violence really plays a strong role in trying to give you the emotional sort of impact that the movie wants. So I thought that was a great aspect of it. I thought the cinematography was fantastic. It is called Green Room, but there is a strong emphasis on the colour green at the start of the film. The start of the film is very vibrant and colourful, but then when things start to go very bad, the colour is sucked out of it. So it's one of those movies where the actual visuals are matching the overall mood. So it is changing, and all of a sudden the situation has got way out of control, and there is a strong sense of dirtiness and grittiness, and once again it gives you that very uncomfortable sort of vibe that Jeremy Saulnier had so much in his other film, Blue Ruin. I thought the acting from Anton Yelchin especially was fantastic. He was the centerpiece, and I thought that his reactions to certain things I thought was very good. And what I liked about this film is that these characters don't make decisions based on the progression of the film. Jeremy Saulnier has really eliminated possibilities of escape. Basically, these other movies where you say to yourself, this character could have got out of this situation by doing this. Why didn't you make the proper decision? All of a sudden, they're staying there for the sake of the film going on, and you kind of feel that they deserve it. But what Jeremy Saulnier has done is that he's eliminated those get out of jail free cards. He's eliminated those situations where the characters could have got out of harm's way, and so because of that you feel that they don't deserve it, and it gives you that strong sense of realism once again. So I thought the suspense was great. There were moments where it really had you on edge, that I thought something was going to happen, but it does hold on for a little bit longer. So the suspense is there, and as I said, the violence does play a strong role in the film, and it's not just for the sake of shocking the audience, although it will shock you. The person who steals the show for me was Patrick Stewart. This guy, once again, is a very realistic bad guy. He wasn't a caricature, he didn't have an evil laugh. He was a guy that you could relate to, once again, and that you could understand why these other skinheads would be drawn to this guy, because he does have a charming sort of way about him, and he's always very calm. He's not screaming, he's not being the typical villain. He's being this very calm guy, but underneath you feel that he's a very, very menacing and very, very scary person. So the villains were played very well, as were the band members. There's no stereotypical annoying guy. There's no, yet the stereotypes are out the window. As I said, this is a very realistic portrayal of a situation that has got way out of hand, and it just turns into an absolute nightmare. So the pacing of the film was very good. It doesn't take long to get into the good parts, and then the end of the film comes about. So unfortunately though, the reason why this movie doesn't really hit you as hard as Blue Ruin did is that Blue Ruin had that sense of being unique. It had that sense, okay, it's a revenge film, but it's a revenge, it shows you how bad revenge can go, how sloppy it can be, and how other people can be affected by this. So it felt like that movie in particular had a little bit of depth, whereas Green Room feels like much more of a generic film. It feels like a film that doesn't really have as much depth as to separate it from a lot of other revenge films. As I said, the characters were great, but the overall idea you've seen before, and because you've seen that idea before, it does give it a level of predictability. Now, unfortunately, I thought the ending was very anticlimactic, and I could guess who was going to survive this and who was going to die. And so that was my biggest problem. In Blue Ruin, you don't know for sure if this guy is actually going to go through and actually succeed in his revenge. But in this movie, it does have that predictability because it feels like a much more generic sort of film. So you've got these great characters, but the great characters weren't really complemented by an in-depth story. It was a very shallow sort of story, and as I said, a generic story, therefore it does become predictable, and the ending I thought fizzed out a little bit. Great tension from start to about the middle, but then it starts to elevate itself and then go down that generic path, therefore it's losing the tension that it creates so brilliantly to start with. So that was my biggest criticism with Green Room, although I'll still say go out there and see it. It is very good for what it is. If you're not going to compare it to Blue Ruin, then I would highly recommend you check out Green Room if you are a fan of films such as Assault on Precinct 13 and also films such as Straw Dogs as well. So strong similarities with those movies, and so yeah, it is a very impressive film. So overall for Green Room, going to give it 3.5 stars. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.